Okay, so get this. Charles Dickens wrote Hard Times way, way before anyone had even heard of Sigmund Freud. But what if the book is a perfect case study for Freud's biggest ideas? That's what we're going to dig into. We're going to see how Dickens was kind of an accidental psychoanalyst, and we'll use that modern lens to unlock this classic story. Right at the heart of this whole story is a character named Louisa Gradgrind, and Dickens gives us this one really powerful metaphor to understand her. He says there's a fire burning inside her. Now, this fire, it's everything, right? It's her passion, her emotions, her desires. But the tragedy is her entire life, her whole upbringing, was basically designed to put that fire out. And that really gets us to the core question of the novel. It's like a big experiment. What actually happens to a person, to their soul, when every single natural feeling is treated like a crime? The answer that Dickens gives us? Well, it's pretty fascinating and honestly devastating. So before we can really get into Louisa's fire, we have to look at the machine that was built to extinguish it. We've got to start with the philosophy that shaped her, this bizarre idea that you could engineer a human soul using nothing but facts. All right, so let's meet the architect of this whole system, Mr. Gradgrind. This guy is the ultimate authoritarian father, and his entire worldview, it's built on just one thing: cold, hard facts. In his world, if you can't measure it, calculate it, or define it, it just doesn't exist. There's no room for it. So what does this Gradgrind method actually look like in practice? Well, it's basically a systematic destruction of childhood. Imagination? Banned. Stories in play? Forbidden. Any kind of emotional expression? Absolutely not. And the results? It's a psychological catastrophe. He ends up with children who literally don't have the words to describe what they're feeling inside. And let's be really clear here. If we look at this from a modern psychological viewpoint, what Mr. Gradgrind is doing, it's not just some strict, old-fashioned education. No way. It's a form of psychological violence. It's an attempt to literally erase the fundamental parts of what makes us human. And this leads us straight to our first big psychoanalytic idea: repression. Freud talked about this all the time. He defined it as the act of forcibly pushing our desires and emotions out of our conscious mind. And the Gradgrind system? It's basically repression on an industrial scale. It's designed to do nothing but that. If we want to get really Freudian about it, you can think of Gradgrind's philosophy as this giant, crushing superego. The superego is that inner voice of rules, of shoulds and should nots, and its one goal is to completely destroy the id. That's our raw, natural desires and instincts. It is a full-on war being waged inside his children's mind. So what happens when you have this kind of war going on inside someone? Well, we see the results play out perfectly in Louisa. She becomes the living, breathing embodiment of a life defined by repression. See, the thing about repressed feelings is they don't just vanish. They have to go somewhere, and they pop up as symptoms. For Louisa, this looks like a few things: a really weird fixation on just staring into the fire, a constant, deep feeling of emptiness, and this chilling apathy that's so bad she agrees to a completely miserable, loveless marriage just because, well, why not? And that whole staring into the fire thing, that is not just some random, quirky character detail. From a psychoanalytic perspective, it's a massive red flag. It's a classic sign that some powerful, forbidden desire has been redirected, channeled into a symbolic and much safer object. And yep, there's a name for that. It's called sublimation. This is what happens when the mind takes an impulse it can't deal with, like intense passion or rage, and channels it into something more acceptable, something symbolic. It's so simple and so tragic. Louisa can't feel her own inner fire, so she just stares at a real one. You see this play out most brutally in her marriage. It really becomes the ultimate symbol of her repression. She's forced to marry this awful man, Mr. Bounderby, who she despises. And it's not a partnership at all. It's a violation of her very soul. It's a deep psychic trauma that just makes her even more emotionally numb. But here's the thing about repression, and this is so important. You can't keep that stuff buried forever. It just doesn't work. Eventually, that psychological dam has to break. And when it does, everything that's been pushed down comes rushing back to the surface. I mean, a system built on denying basic human nature is it's fundamentally unstable. It can't last. It creates this immense pressure cooker inside a person. And eventually, that pressure has to go somewhere. For Louisa, that breaking point was always coming. It was inevitable.
And when it finally happens, oh man, is it spectacular. She confronts her father, and in one of the most powerful scenes in the whole book, she asks him this incredible question. She's not just talking, she's unleashing years and years of buried pain, using this beautiful metaphor of a garden that he never allowed to bloom.
Now, it'd be really easy to look at that and just say, oh, she's gone mad. But if we look at it through that psychoanalytic lens, we see something totally different. This isn't a breakdown. It's a breakthrough. It's the explosive. It's painful for sure, but it is the absolutely necessary return of her real psychological truth. And to really hammer home what was lost, Dickens cleverly gives us other characters who represent a totally different path. By looking at them, we can see what a psychologically healthy person actually looks like in this crazy world he's created. And here it is, the two paths laid out side by side. You've got Louisa on one side, imagination denied, emotions crushed, and the result is neurosis and a complete breakdown. Then you have Sissy Jupe. She holds onto her imagination, she expresses affection freely, and what's the result? Stability, health. Sissy is the perfect foil. She's everything Louisa was supposed to be, but never could. And you know, the damage from this system, it doesn't just stop with the kids. Take Mrs. Gradgrind, the mother. She's just sort of there. She's passive, no one listens to her, and she's always vaguely sick. Her suffering has no voice, so it has to find another way to express itself. There's a clinical term for this too. It's called somatization. It's what happens when deep psychological pain has nowhere to go, so it gets converted into real physical symptoms. It's why Mrs. Gradgrind always complains about a pain somewhere in the room. She literally can't locate the source of the pain inside herself. Her body is screaming the truth that her mind isn't allowed to speak. Okay, so let's pull all of this together. What is just so remarkable when you step back and look at it is how Dickens, writing decades before psychoanalysis was even a thing, managed to create a flawless case study of its biggest ideas. I mean, when you actually map it out like this, the connections are just undeniable. Every major character's journey perfectly aligns with a core psychoanalytic concept. You've got Louisa's whole arc from repression to the return of the repressed. You've got her mother's physical illness as somatization. Dickens built this entire psychological ecosystem. And Sissy Jupe is in there as the one single example of what a healthy mind looks like. And all of this leaves us with one last really fascinating thought to chew on. Could it be that the greatest writers, people like Dickens, are actually intuitive psychologists, that they're mapping the deepest, darkest territories of the human mind long before science ever gets there? It's like they draw these incredible, detailed maps, and sometimes it just takes science a few decades to catch up and give us the names for everything they already found.